It's not the bullet, it's the sound. You're 19 years old, lying face down in a hedgerow in Normandy, and what comes out of the enemy tree line isn't a gunshot. It's one long, tearing shriek of metal, so fast you cannot hear individual rounds. Your sergeant is shouting at you to move, and your body simply will not. Stay with me to the end, and you'll know exactly which weapon broke the most minds in the Second World War. And I promise you, it isn't the one on the movie posters. These are the 10 most feared weapons of World War II, ranked not by how many men they killed, but by the raw fear they put into the people who had to face them. Some of these you could fight back against. Number 1, you could not. So before you scroll away, ask yourself one honest question. If your unit got the order to advance through that field, would you have gone? Let's count down. Number 10, the sniper rifle. A bolt-action Carabiner 98K with a small telescopic scope mounted on the receiver. On paper, the most ordinary weapon on this list. 5 rounds, wood and steel. But put it in the hands of a trained shooter from a Wehrmacht sniper school, and you create a particular kind of horror that has nothing to do with the bullet itself. In Stalingrad, in the winter of 1942, German and Soviet snipers fought a private war inside the larger one. Entire factory buildings ruled by a single hidden marksman who picked off anyone who moved. Veterans called it the silent death, and the terror wasn't the shot. It was the days of waiting for one. You learned not to light cigarettes at night, not to raise your head above a wall, not even for 2 seconds, not to look out the same window twice. Whole platoons could be pinned for an entire day by one man you would never see. That's the fear at number 10. And from here, it only gets worse. Number 9, the flamethrower. The German Flammenwerfer 35 weighed nearly 80 pounds, 2 cylindrical tanks strapped to your back, full of fuel and nitrogen, and a nozzle that could spit fire 40 feet through any opening you could find. The terror it caused is older than gunpowder. It reaches something animal in the brain, a fear our species has carried since the first cave. In bunker fighting from Normandy to the Pacific, defenders who would hold a position against rifles and grenades would simply abandon it the moment they saw a flame team approaching the firing slit. And the men who carried these tanks knew something darker. A flamethrower operator, if taken alive, was very often shown no mercy by the troops he had been burning. They walked into battle knowing it, with 80 pounds of pressurized fuel between their shoulder blades. Number 9 reaches deep into something primal. Number 8 makes the fight personal. Number 8, the MP40 in close quarters. A simple stamped steel submachine gun, 9mm, 32-round magazine. Nothing exotic. But Stalingrad rewrote what weapons mattered. House by house, room by room, sometimes floor by floor of the same building, German and Soviet troops fought a war the manuals did not cover. A war where a man with a submachine gun at the top of a staircase decided who lived. Veterans called it Rattenkrieg, rat war, fighting in the rubble and the cellars and the broken pipes, where you would hear your enemy breathing through a wall before you ever saw him. The fear here wasn't the weapon. It was that the enemy had a face, and it was inches from yours, and only one of you was leaving the room. Number 8 is the terror of the personal. The next 3 take that away. They kill from where you cannot reach. Number 7, the MG42. 1,200 rounds a minute. So fast the human ear cannot pick out individual shots, only one long, tearing shriek of metal, the sound the cold open of this video started with. Allied troops called it Hitler's buzzsaw, and the Americans were so disturbed by the psychological effect on green replacements that they actually trained their men on recordings of the noise, just so the sound would not freeze them in place when they heard it for real. On D-Day, on Omaha Beach, MG-42s built into concrete bunkers above the sand reaped entire landing companies in the first 10 minutes. The fear was not just the volume of fire, it was the helplessness in the open. You could not move forward. You could not move back. You could only press your face into the wet sand and wait. Number 7 didn't just kill in numbers. It made men afraid to take a single step. Number 6. the Panzerfaust and the Panzerschreck. Handheld anti-tank weapons, the Panzerfaust, a one-shot disposable tube, the Panzerschreck, a German copy of the American bazooka. Cheap, light, simple enough for a 14-year-old to fire. And here is the point. By 1944, the men inside Allied tanks knew that any wooded hedgerow, any pile of rubble, any cellar window in any village they rolled into could contain a single boy with a tube, and that tube could turn their 30-ton steel home into a furnace in less than a second. American tank crews in Normandy lined the inside of their Shermans with extra sandbags and welded scrap iron to the hulls, not because it actually stopped a Panzerfaust round, but because doing something, anything, was easier than doing nothing. Number 6 is the fear of being trapped inside the very thing supposed to protect you. Number 5 replaced that fear with a bigger one. Number 5, the Tiger One. 88mm gun, frontal armor most Allied weapons could not penetrate at any normal combat range, and a reputation by 1944 that became its own weapon. There is a documented term from Normandy, tiger phobia, for the psychological effect on British and American troops, where men would identify any German tank, often incorrectly, as a tiger and refuse to engage. Sometimes one tiger genuinely did stop an entire advance. At Villers-Bocage in June 1944, a single tiger ambushed a British armored column and destroyed more than a dozen tanks and transports in a few minutes. The men who survived that morning spoke about it for the rest of their lives. The tiger's fear was a strange one. Not loud, not screaming, just the slow, certain realization that the round that just punched through your friend's tank was about to come for yours. Number 5 is the fear of unstoppable steel. From here, the weapons stop hitting your body and start hitting your nerves directly. Number 4, the Stuka siren. The Junkers Ju-87 dive bomber had a peculiarity its designers turned into a weapon. A small, wind-driven siren bolted to each landing gear, nicknamed the Jericho Trompete, the trumpet of Jericho. As the Stuka tipped over into its near-vertical dive, the sirens wound up into a rising shriek that grew louder and higher the closer it fell. The siren added nothing to the bomb. Its only job was your fear. On the roads of France in 1940, refugees and rear guard units learned to dread that sound before they ever saw the aircraft. And here is the honest part. It worked spectacularly at first, and then less, and finally so poorly that the Germans removed the sirens entirely. Once people understood that the scream might mean a target 100 meters away, the spell broke, and the siren only cost the plane precious speed. Number 4 is the only weapon on this list built purely to terrify. Number 3 did the same job, but it carried high explosive with the scream. Number 3, the Nebelwerfer. A towed 6-tube rocket launcher that fired its shells in a ripple, and it wasn't the explosion the men remembered for the rest of their lives. It was the sound in the air. Each rocket rose with a long, rising, warbling moan, like something in pain dragged across the sky. American and British troops called it the moaning Minnie and the screaming Mimi. You heard it coming for whole seconds that stretched out like minutes, and there was nothing to do but press your body into the dirt and find out, by the change in pitch, whether it was for you or for the next field over. Veterans told their families decades later that the moan got into their sleep and never quite left. Number 3 teaches the lesson this entire list keeps repeating. The ear breaks the mind faster than the eye. Number 2 strips the warning away entirely. Number 2, the V-weapons. London, 1944. People learned a horrible new ritual. The V-1, a pulse jet cruise missile, flew over with a loud clattering motorbike buzz, and as long as you could hear that buzz, you were safe. The terror was the silence. When the engine cut out, the bomb was now gliding somewhere in the next 10 or 12 seconds, and the whole street stopped breathing at once to learn whose street it was. Then came the V2, the first true ballistic missile in history, falling faster than the speed of its own sound. It gave no warning at all. The explosion came first. The scream of its arrival came afterward, for the people who were already gone. Civilians who had survived years of bombing said the V weapons were different. There was no all clear, because there was no all clear to give. Number 2 is the fear of no defense and no warning. So what could possibly be worse than that? Stay with me. The answer surprises almost everyone. Number 1. Massed artillery and the Katyusha rocket. And here is exactly why it surprises people. It isn't a flashy weapon. It isn't on any movie poster. It isn't even one weapon. It's the scale of it. On the Eastern Front, beginning in 1943, the Red Army made artillery the centerpiece of every offensive. Thousands of guns and hundreds of multiple rocket launchers, firing for hours without pause along an entire front. The Soviet Katyusha, the BM-13 truck-mounted rocket launcher, fired 16 rockets in a ripple over a few seconds, and the German troops on the receiving end called it Stalingrad, Stalin's organ, for the howling chord the rockets made in flight. The sound was not the worst part. The worst part was that the Katyushas would arrive in waves of dozens of trucks, and behind them would be the regular heavy artillery, and behind that, more rockets, and the storm of fire would not stop for an hour, sometimes for 3. German veterans from operations like Bagration in 1944, where Soviet artillery densities exceeded 200 guns per kilometer of front, described it not as a battle, but as a kind of weather. You could not fight the sky. You could only lie in a hole and endure it, hour after hour, as the earth heaved and men a few feet from you simply stopped existing. The very phrase shell shock from the war before came back into use. Most of the dying on the Eastern Front was caused not by rifles or tanks or even machine guns. It was caused by guns the dying men never saw. That is number 1, not a clever weapon. The faceless, endless, industrial-scale storm of steel that broke more minds than anything else in the Second World War. 10 weapons. From the silent crack of a sniper's rifle, to the scream of the Stuka, to the inhuman volume of fire on the Eastern Front. Some of them you could fight, most of them you could only try to survive. And the one thing every single one of them shared wasn't how it killed. It was what it did to the mind of the man waiting in the dark for it to start. So I'll ask you one last time. Would you have advanced through that field, or would you have run? Tell me your own number 1 in the comments, and if you honestly believe you could have lain still in your hole and ridden out a 3-hour Soviet barrage, you're braver than most men who were actually there. Next time we go inside just one of these, the machine gun whose own crews were afraid of the barrel melting in their hands. Subscribe so you don't miss it. And the shorts from this video drop all week.